Okay, so here's the oil cooler hose kit. It has these nice AN fittings, kind of a gray hose. So 2 lines for the cooler, and then there's this little adapter that goes on the cooler that these lines will thread into, right? A couple of little O-rings for the cooler side of the adapter, and a nice little black bolt that bolts the adapter to the cooler. And then these 2 little adapters that go on the motor. So those will thread in to the oil feed and return on the motor. Now, you could probably build these for cheaper than what these cost. These are about $300 to buy like this. There's a couple of different manufacturers. These are Jerry's gaskets. You could get your own AN fittings and the hose and cut it and fit it all together. You would still have to source this little adapter from a Corvette specialist. So that costs some cash. And then these 2 little adapters you'd have to get too as well. So all in, you could probably do it for cheaper than the $300, but you know, these are nice. It saves a lot of time just buying it like this. I've got too many other projects, so I just decided to pony up the $300 and some and get these. Okay, let's see how they go on. Okay, so looking at from the right side of the motor here are the factory hoses, oil cooler hoses. They go into the oil cooler over here. Then they kind of curve around here and go into the motor there just to the right of the oil filter. So there's the 2 adapters will go down there. 2 hoses come forward like this around the corner, and there's the other little adapter that will go in there to connect into the oil cooler itself. Okay, here's the hose, so it'll be like in there like that, kind of curve around, and then hook into the motor like that. So that's what you get. Now, the issue with these factory hoses, and I think they're almost all leaked by now, was usually this connection here between the rubber and the metal. What happens is oil seeps out of there, and it'll follow along the hose and then hit the front of the motor and drip down the front of the motor. And it could look like a oil pan because it'll go down to the bottom of the motor, bottom of the pan, kind of soak that front half, or maybe even the whole bottom of the oil pan. It might look like some sort of a front seal leak because the front of the motor will be wet. It kind of just goes everywhere. Once it migrates over here, it can just go to the front of the motor and then down and just coat everything. So if you just I'll just take a paper towel, just kind of feel under the hoses, right? And you see it's wet. They're wet. And then if you follow along under the hoses, you know, it's all not oil soaked, but there's definitely oil traveling out of those hoses. So, like I said, this car's 33, going on 34 years old already, and these hoses were failing. You know, you can look at guys replacing them like 10, 15 years ago. So, pretty much they all need this to be done eventually. If you want to address oil leaks, that's a common one. There's a couple of other common oil leaks on these motors that I may put some videos up on as well. All right, let's get started with the install of these lovely new hoses and the nice black AN fittings. Okay, so the kit comes with this nice instruction sheet with some pictures on it and some instructions. Doesn't look too bad, but we'll see. First step is to start disconnecting the lines. So there's a 1 1/8 inch fitting here on the motor side. Apparently they're quite tight. And there's a 10 millimeter bolt holding the factory adapter in. So we'll get going with that. Got some rags here. Apparently you lose some oil in this process, so we'll stuff some rags underneath there and try and get some underneath the oil cooler side over here, just to make sure we don't spill too much more oil all over the motor. And we'll start by this 10 millimeter here. There's just one 10 millimeter bolt holding this on. If I can find it, there it is. And we'll see how tight that one is. Not tight at all. Pull that one out. Okay. All right, these are actually 1 1/4 inch fittings. I don't have a 1 1/4 inch big wrench, but I do have a great big crescent wrench that should fit on there pretty good, I think. And these are quite tight. Okay, there's the old adapter, one of them, the top one. And that should give us pretty good access with my great big crescent wrench to the bottom fitting now. We'll take that out and then remove the bottom adapter. Yeah. Oh. There we go. All right, so that hose is off. Now we can pull the whole hose assembly out. So there's the old hose assembly. Kind of dripping oil all over the place. And some oil is dripping out down there as well. Looks like it's stopping though. Okay, got my socket on the lower one now. Big breaker bar. Coming. Those are tight. Supposed to have some kind of thread lock or thread sealant on them. So we'll pull that out next. There's some oil down there, but I think the rag's caught it. Okay, now we'll put the new adapters in with some thread sealant. This is 592 thread sealant. This is Permatex. There's Loctite equivalent. I think you can use 592 or 596. I don't know how much of this stuff you're supposed to use, but we'll put lots on. Okay, do the bottom one first. I'm going to make sure that thread stuff is at the edge, because I don't know how far these actually thread in. Not too far, I don't think. Okay, now I'll do the adapter that goes on the oil cooler side down there. The two new O-rings fit in a little groove here. Just pop them in there. And then this also comes with a new bolt, so we will put that 10mm bolt in there and attach it to the cooler. Okay, make sure the O-rings are still there. pop this in here. Don't think that has to be overly tight. You just don't want it to come loose, but the O-rings are doing the sealing, right? So. Okay, one of these hoses is a little bit longer. It's this one. That's the bottom hose, the longer hose. So, fish our hose through here. Take the little protective cap off. And we'll put a little bit of motor oil here. And I think what you do with these is you tighten them, then you loosen them, then you tighten them again with some motor oil, and that seals them up. So we'll do that with the bottom one first. Just a little clean motor oil there. And even in here we can put some. Okay. And then over here, that one's going to go on the lower one as well, right, like that. Again, a little bit of oil here and here. Okay, now we got the top adapter screwed in, and we'll do the upper hose, which is a little bit shorter. Take that off, and that end will go under here on that side. And over here at the oil cooler, we have our top line, which will go right there. Okay, now the top hose is on. So both top and bottom here, top and bottom there. And that's it. Hopefully it won't leak. That's the Jerry's Gaskets oil cooler hose kit.